actually going to share a screen because the book today, this is Unconscious Branding by Douglas Van Praet. It's actually kind of a dryish, textbooky sort of deal, but I think I found it really interesting because I'm a nerd. So you may not have found it all that interesting, but what's really funny is you've heard of the AIDA model, or the attention, interest, desire, action model. Okay. Yes. Yeah, you've been in marketing long enough to do that. And John, you probably heard about this in college, I would imagine. No?
No, not really. I didn't go for marketing degree.
No, but yeah, I mean,
it was finance, international finance. So
okay. Yeah, this is usually like day one in any marketing class, is they teach you this, the AIDA model. And the interesting thing is 80%, I would say, of the advertising that I see does not follow this model very well and would benefit from following it. And it's been, just a standard since 1898, at least in the United States. St. Elmo Lewis proposed it, and, he used it in a bunch of different textbooks and other things. And it just became the de facto standard for advertising. They just said, this is what an advertisement is supposed to do. It's supposed to get your attention, first of all, and then get your interest, which is different from attention, and then build your desire for a particular product or service, and then get you to take action. So 4 steps. And, most advertising is kind of built around this model. Basically it starts with a really loud beginning, designed to take over your TV screen, or, the ads in the United States even get louder on the TV, as they come on. So you've been watching a show and then all of a sudden the commercial comes on and it's louder than whatever you were watching. They have some technology now that prevents that. But then they capture your interest with an interesting question or a key statistic or a joke or a elephant marching across the night, something, and then they introduce the product, and then they get you to take action, call today or sign up now, or, something like that. So that's where the call to action that we're so fond of as marketers came from, was actually 1898. And I found that actually pretty fascinating. And this is the way they advertised the Barnum and Bailey circuses. This is the way they advertised all of the, 100-year-old products that you're familiar with, and Coca-Cola and all of that. But Douglas, our friend Douglas Van Praet, thinks that there is a different way that people react now, and it's not linear and it's not necessarily rational. The thing about the AIDA model is that it assumes those things. This is a little bit different. It says, you need to interrupt somebody's pattern, of their scrolling or their day, or, ring their phone or whatever. Create comfort, lead the imagination, shift their feelings about a product or service. And this is true even of business-to-business products and services, because the first thing you think when you think of business-to-business services is usually, either boring or expensive or hazardous, or, I don't want to mess up my day, or, whatever the feeling is that you have about that particular thing. Then you need to satisfy the critical mind with the data, the benefits and features and all of that stuff, and then change their associations from whatever it used to be to whatever you want it to be, and then take action. So I don't know how you feel about this, but this is kind of the shift between a real simple model to something that's a little more complex. And I do think it has some benefits, in the sense that it works better in an online world. It works better in a business-to-business world. It works better in a lot of ways than the old AIDA model.
From a non-marketing guy?
Yeah.
Clickbait. Pure clickbait, nothing else.
That is what this is. That is exactly what this is. Right? But then you have to go further than that.
Well, because the old model, high level, 3 or 4 things, and you can tell exactly what's going on. And this is just somebody's attention, trying to get some.
But this is the same, right?
Yeah, well, the difference is I see what you're saying, but what this quote new model is.
Yeah.
It's just the guy wants people's attention.
But
It
attention doesn't do you any good.
you go in with this you could go into those 4 basic things, and you could make any number of line items
Mhm.
that don't line up with what he said and do the same thing.
Right, agreed. And I think this is where, a lot of times we expect one piece of advertising to do the entire job. And it used to, you'd see a Tide commercial or whatever, and it would get your attention, and it would get your interest, and it would make you remember the smell of clothes on the line or whatever and stuff, and you'd go, "Yeah, running out of laundry detergent, I need to go buy some Tide." So, I mean, it worked for that sense, and you could do that all in one 30-second or 1-minute commercial, right? So
Well,
it was kinda standalone. This model cannot be standalone. This has to be a series of interactions with the prospect, right? Yeah, no, I mean, this kind of assumes that you have like you interrupt the pattern with a headline or a crazy cat video or something. You get people to click on it, and then you have to make them comfortable enough with you to listen to you. You have to lead their imagination, shift their feelings, satisfy their critical mind, and usually this goes beyond a social post. This would go into something like a white paper or something like that. Change their associations, so if they associate regional air travel as an example with a caravan or whatever, then you need to shift that and say, you need to change your thinking. You need to think bigger or think better. Um, and this is the most difficult part, I think, of this whole process. And then take action, whatever action that is. So either schedule a consultation or pick up the phone or, place a position order or, whatever the situation is. Yeah.
It does rethink things like presentation decks.
Yeah, exactly. So, it assumes, I think, a relationship instead of one interaction, which I think is good for business to business marketing. Uh,
Right.
and it also assumes multiple pieces in your marketing campaign. You can't do all of this. I mean, unless you did like a 1-hour infomercial, but how are you gonna get them into that infomercial? Nobody's gonna sit there and watch a 1-hour deal unless they have
Right.
unless you've already given them a good reason to and get to maybe the 4th step to get them into something bigger and deeper and, more, and this
Mm.
might happen over a week, a month, a year, some amount of time, right?
Think about that for a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So, I think for our purposes for aviation, there is some benefit to thinking about it this way. I think a lot of aviation companies would benefit from adding this, because, all they do
Well,
is attract attention and then they wonder why they're not making sales. They don't go through the rest of the steps. But this takes it actually 3 steps further. This is a 7-step process as opposed to a 4-step process. So, um, yeah, it's hard to say that everybody should be doing a 7-step process when they're not even doing a 4-step process really well, right?
right. Okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah. So it's
Mhm.
kinda hard to apply to clients, and kinda hard to, figure that out, but I think it could be really, really powerful, especially in some of our larger campaigns and things.
Right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so, Ben, since you're the one that's here, we can walk through this with EBT if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be good. That's fine.
Okay.
That's
So
good. I'm just trying to catch up. And you just
oh,
thinking.
oh, that's
That's all
alright.
right. This is good. Yeah. Well, because that's our challenge. I've got to get this social media stuff rolling, and this is timely.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to think through where we're gonna push them to if we can't do it all in one.
Yeah.
Get their attention. Then what?
Right, exactly. So, and I think social media is really, really good at 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4. It's
Interesting.
not
Okay.
great at 5, 6, and 7, at least with our markets. Angel, you can tell me if you think differently. I know you've been doing social media for a long time, so it's really good at getting attention, right?
Yeah, social media really in today's world, you really need to share posts that really attract or surprise people. So I think, yeah, I agree with 1, 2, and 3
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, you can't really shift somebody's feelings, um,
with just one post.
just with a post, exactly. Right, or,
But
one
what's
postcard.
interesting,
Yeah.
so you guys are all applying this strictly to online.
No, we could apply it to
Yes, you
something
are.
else.
Yes, you are.
Okay, for
Mhm.
Ben's example, since you talked about social marketing, I thought we would start there, but we could apply it to postal mail.
Yeah, well, okay.
Let's do that.
What
So,
no,
postcard.
no. No, 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 no.
Okay,
Hang on a minute.
okay.
Right, if you're not talking online, what other things are you talking about?
Direct mail. So, one would be a postcard.
Yeah, you're still talking the same thing. Go on. What else?
Direct mail.
Right.
So, you get a postcard in your
Yeah,
mailbox with
yeah,
a
yeah,
stamp
yeah.
on it.
No,
We're
no,
not
no,
talking
no, no,
social
no.
media.
That's the same time. What I'm saying is
Okay.
this is the first time I've seen something
Mhm.
as business school. My marketing prof said nobody buys anything unless it's marketed.
Yeah.
And I took extreme prejudice against them.
Of course you did.
Well, and because of my own experiences.
Mhm.
But now, see, because the first time I figured out I wanted something, it wasn't marketed to me. It wasn't even a branded thing. It was what it looked to me like is a bicycle with a motor on it. I didn't find out until years later it was actually a Harley. It didn't
Mhm.
have a name on it, didn't have anything on it.
Okay.
I saw it and I said, I want one of those. I
Okay.
wonder if you can buy it or if I have to make it.
So, let's go back to your assumption that this is only social, and I'm gonna say it can be done in any medium.
But you didn't let me finish.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like me with the Harley, the DV3 in particular, people are gonna see it
Mhm.
and that's gonna interrupt with saying, "Holy cow, look at that thing."
Yeah, you're walking
Now,
down the street, you
so
see something you've not seen before.
yeah, so all this stuff would apply if you just see it.
Mhm.
I mean, taxiing, parked on the ramp, flying, wherever you see it,
Mhm.
this is gonna work.
Oh, yeah. And the DBT is a natural for this because, somebody sees this for the first time on the ramp and they go, "Holy cow, what is that thing?" Right? So you got number 1 settled before, just by being there. But also, I think social media is a great option for you as well. But if we wanted to do this in mail, we could do that with a postcard, then, maybe a QR code to a video to create comfort, lead the imagination, shift the feeling, then a link from the video to a white paper or a brochure or something like that that has all of the stats and, facts and figures and all that stuff. A comparison to what else is on the market that, they could buy and then take action. This is what you do next, right?
Mm.
Get out your checkbook.
Yeah, well, sure, but I mean, I'm serious. I think the DV2 is uniquely gonna fit on this thing without doing anything more than you just see it fly by or see it on the ramp.
Mhm. Yeah, but there's not gonna be very many of them flying around to start with,
Well,
so we
but
gotta scale
but
bigger.
these things
Mhm.
will exactly go down through, and I can see how that would work for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we were looking at the old model, I don't know that this goes deep enough to actually get somebody to buy an airplane or to get into a multi-year relationship with a service provider or to do a business to business kind of a purchase, right? So I do think this model probably fits our market better. Um, which isn't to say that the old one isn't useful because it worked for, hundreds of years or 100 years anyway, more than 100 years. With the DBT, obviously, if somebody sees one, it's an interruption. then the next thing is to create comfort, and I think you guys have done that by pushing, the safety, aspect of the product as much as you are.
Yep. Okay.
So leading with safety, I think, is amazing, very, very smart from this perspective and from every other, because aviation and safety are such a intertwined topic. And I guess the question is, if we wanted to do this with social media, interrupt the pattern, obviously beautiful images of the DBT and even video of, anything that we can do to animate that or anything else is a good idea.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. And then creating comfort, that goes to you could actually buy and fly one of these things, and it's actually safer than most of the aircraft on the market for this, and this reason, right? Leading the imagination to, and this can also be done with a series of posts, maybe something like things you can do with a DBT that you can't do with a Cirrus SR-22. Things you can do with a DBT that you can't do with what's the 150 called? It's not a Skyhawk, it's a whatever. Anyway, right, or a 172, which is, the Skyhawk. Things you can do with the DB2 you can't do with the Skyhawk, et cetera, kind of leading the imagination and so on. And then shifting their feeling, from this is an exotically crazy thing to this is something I could actually own and maintain and keep and fly. And, this would actually fit into my hangar, my schedule, my life, my practice as a real estate professional, whatever it is that I do that I need to travel for, this would actually work. Right?
Right.
And then their imagination is there. And, what was it that, was it Donald Rumsfeld that says, you get
The
people.
known and unknowns.
Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a great quote, but the one I was thinking about, their hearts and minds will follow once you
Right.
get hold of somebody's a checkbook or their wallet or, something that's really critical to them. So, yeah, once they figure out, this actually makes some sense, then you start to satisfy their critical mind, and then that's where you do the comparisons and the facts and figures and stats and all the stuff that Michael is so amazing at creating all those decks. He's got so many decks that do number 5.
Interesting point.
Yeah, and then number 6, change their associations. And this is the hardest one because, somebody has been a Mooney fan club president for 15 years or whatever, they're gonna feel like it's a betrayal of their whole community or whatever if they buy one of these things, right? So, you have to shift that association and say, "You know what? You are not hurting your associations, you're actually improving them, by thinking differently, and you're improving general aviation. We're not ruining general aviation, we're helping it evolve so that it will survive, We're not breaking with tradition, we are fully supporting it and helping it in every way we can." And the thing that he does in the book is, sponsoring different events or, getting known with the old whatever's in the industry, so maybe helping preserve warbirds or, something like that where you're supporting tradition as well as, so that people aren't being a Benedict Arnold to general aviation by buying this thing, which they're not, but you know how people's minds work, or at least this is about how people's minds work. They have a really hard time, especially if it's a social thing. Like I think John would have a really hard time buying a Japanese motorcycle because he's a Harley guy, right?
Right.
Yeah, and, that kind of thing. So, changing those associations and then taking action, um, and then that you just need to make super easy and, a logical next step. But I think what a lot of people do is they put the call to action right up front, interrupting their pattern and saying, "Buy this thing," without having gone through the rest of these steps, and then it sounds like cheese, or it sounds like spam, or any other
Right.
cheap food products you wanna put on the, market because, yeah, you're asking them to do that. So, and I think this is probably, at least in most cases, it's gonna be 3 different marketing pieces, a social post, a video, a white paper or a deck, and then a call to action, a salesperson, making some kind of a And often it is a personal thing where you have somebody actually interacting with somebody to get them across the finish line. That step number 7 is almost always personal in the aviation industry. At least that's what our brokers tell us. So.
Okay. Yep. I'm just trying to keep up.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Anyway, John, Angel, feel free to jump in if you have any. I don't want to just sit here and lecture all day, but
No, not to worry. I'm just trying to keep the noise down while I.
exactly, I understand. John's got somebody working on the garage door in his office. So
Oh no! What?
his office is in the garage, not because I kicked him out of the house, but because he actually likes working in the garage. So that's But
Yeah, I've got everything out here in the office. I've got 3 or 4 computers, multiple screens.
Really big window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great in the summer.
Social media post, white paper. Okay, so interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps. That's interesting to think about social media as only accomplishing sort of part of the story, not trying to do the whole thing in social media.
Yeah. If we're selling candy bars or T-shirts, it'll work, we're not selling candy bars or T-shirts.
Right. No.
And I think that's true of all of our clients. Every single one of them, I think, requires multiple conversations, multiple interactions, all of those kinds of things. So, social media is the tip of the spear, but it always has to lead to something else. And that's something that we can think about, in terms of our content process, Angel, as well. As we're creating. And sometimes it's totally fine to have a social post that isn't sales oriented, that's just a happy 4th of July or whatever, because people in relationships have different levels of conversations, so not every post has to lead to this whole ball of wax, but some of them should.
What's interesting as well is what the number of contacts it takes to make a sale.
Yeah.
Sales guys give up after the second or third, and most sales, at least in aviation, are made to the 5th and 12th contact.
Right. And this supports that, right? Because your first contact is just, hey, here I am. Now you have my contact information, etc. Or, you can start thinking about this, and then you have to follow the rest of the process. The other part of this is that it is not necessarily linear. Almost every sale that I have ever made, and it could be because I'm not in sales full time, but every sale that I've ever made has gone backwards and forwards and sideways and then backwards and forwards again in this process multiple times. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody that skips from step 1 to step 7. And that does happen, especially if somebody is just on fire and needs something right now and they know they need it. And all I needed to do was be in the right place at the right time. But most of the time, there's going to be people shifting up, down, backwards, and sideways. None of this in order in their mind or in mine. In the way that it happens. So, and it may take 4 times to shift their feelings.
Right.
Or 4 times to satisfy their critical mind if they're one of those kind of people, the engineering types, or, tell me again about this, or I have more questions about that. And so we'll keep going back to step 5 after going up and down the scale 15 times, and that's totally fine as well. I think that happens.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say, if there's something unique about our industry, it's probably step 5. People come and go and come back to that. And I think, I like to put that further up in the process as well, so that they have a reason to stick with it long enough to go back and forth with us a few times. So, we may do social posts that have the facts and figures or the comparison or the whatever, and then come back and forth again.
That's to show how it fits you're talking about. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, satisfy critical mind. Sorry, wait a minute.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
That's the same one. Right. Satisfy
Right.
critical mind.
Right.
Got it.
So the features and the benefits and all that stuff, it's not trivia. in our industry, it's really, really important to do that sooner and later and, have that in their way multiple times. So I would say the numbers are almost, I don't know if they're irrelevant, but they're certainly not hard and fast, in what we do.
Yeah, well, that's true. Most sales process did. Well, sometimes people jump.
Mhm.
They already, like you said, they already know they wanted it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's happened maybe 3 times in the, 12 years that we've been doing this, that I've had somebody skip from step 1 to step 7, but,
Right.
most of the time, it's upwards, downwards, backwards, and sideways, multiple times and things like that, so yeah.
Interesting.
In fact, what I just went through,
Oh, yeah?
they
Do tell.
right? They put a new seal on the door, and they wanted me to close it, and I said, "Let's close it first."
Mhm.
Problem is the headerboard is, warped,
Mm.
and I go out for this seal, but it didn't seal. So they kinda worked on the bumps.
Mhm. So they have to go back and forth, and I think you're probably the poster child for number 5 here, John.
Yeah, but whatever.
Exactly. I think you come back to that multiple times in a conversation, and especially in a sales situation. John will spend months, and he's actually a pretty good target demographic for us. We like to say he's our test case because it's so hard to sell him things. And, I look at him when he's making a purchase decision, and he goes up and down and backwards and sideways on this, and he comes back to step number 5, probably alternating with every other step. So you get his attention and you have to satisfy his critical mind. You create comfort for him, then you have to satisfy his critical mind again. And then you lead his imagination, and then you have to satisfy his critical mind again. Shift his feelings, number 5 again. Change the associations, number 5 again. And then maybe he'll do number 7 if we get through all that. So it's a fun,
Even after number 7, remember when we bought the airplane?
yeah. And you go back again.
We went for a test flight, with the flight engineer.
Mhm.
And he was doing whatever, and I said, "I want to test out a few things that I've read about these aircraft." And she said, "Go ahead, you can't do anything, can't get you out of this." I said, "Okay." So, I mean, for a 172, they redesigned the leading edge of that wing, and it's not noticeable unless you're looking for it. But by doing that, I mean, we were at 5,000 feet, right? VFR
So you
day.
got plenty of room to play, yeah. Mhm.
And I slowed it down. And that thing's low flight was at 25 to 30 knots. And that's unbelievable. But I mean, I say 25 to 30 because it has tapes in it and they were vibrating back and forth. It was going slow.
Yeah. It wouldn't get a solid reading.
Then I did some other stuff too, but just wanted to know.
Yeah. And I think that's true, especially if somebody's just made a big purchase, you have to go back and make sure that they are comfortable with it, and that's part of, like, our onboarding process. People will, and, this is something I think that we recommend for you, Ben, as well, is after people have made the purchase, somehow you need to, have a training provider or something like that that understands they are still in the sales process after they've taken delivery. They need to be super happy with this thing so that you get the reviews and the testimonials and all that other things. So
Right.
they have to understand what they bought, so that they are totally comfortable flying it and, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. So when I did a test flight, I didn't just go for a ride and say, "Oh, this is cool."
Mhm.
I was out there doing my own things based on what I knew about the new wing.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was an interesting hour.
Mhm. Yeah, and everything you buy is like that. I've seen it. It'll take 6 months to do all the research that you need to, even buying a new computer or, anything else. It's a long, long, long process. And, I think if we build our marketing with this structure in mind, it will actually solve for the most difficult case. And then people, we need to be able to make it easy for people to not go through the whole thing if they don't want to. Obviously, some people are going to skip over things that are more or less important to them. But as long as we have materials that satisfy every one of these steps, I think we're going to do a lot better than we would under the old AIDA model, right?
Yeah, I think that's where you're going, is comparing it to the
Yeah.
basic 5, 1, 2, 4, basic 4.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, this isn't numerical, I guess. This is always been, at least in my experience with people, has always been a 4-step model. And, that's the way we've always thought about marketing. And so, this book was really interesting to me because of this, as the first time somebody's had the temerity to, take this 100-year-old thing and say, let's do something different, or it's not the first time, there have been a lot of different, um, variations of AIDA. Um, there's the AIDA's love, attention, interest, search, desire, action, like, dislike, share, love, and hate. This is like the Instagram version, right? The buyer's journey is one that we've been hearing about a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Awareness, consideration, decision. There's the hook, story, offer. This is Russell Brunson. He was in John and I were in a Dan Kennedy marketing group for the longest time, and we still are. We still go to their mastermind things and so forth. But he says, you can use AIDA, but you have to have emotion, storytelling, and offers at every single step. Which is, a good, Russell's actually, pretty bright. So I think this is on the right track. And then, of course, this is Van Praet's 7 Steps, which I think makes sense. And then there's McKinsey's loyalty loop, which kind of adds a whole section onto the end of this after people make a purchase. Post-purchase evaluation, advocacy, loyalty, resales, recaptures, referrals, etc., and so on. So there's lots of variations on all of these, and they're all kind of the same thing, but I just kinda like the way this one is laid out after having thought about it for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is laid out pretty clear. I mean, you
Yeah.
can use it for a lot of things.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
So since this is a book club, I suppose we should go around the room and just say, so is there anything that you learned today that you didn't know before, or anything that you wanna try based on what we learned today? Or, would you give the book a, 1 out of 10, that kinda thing? John, you wanna go first, and then Angel, and then Ben, so in order of appearance? And John, you're muted.
Oh, it's loud in here, but this is
Mhm.
the first time I've seen that validates the fact that you don't have to be marketed to just because you see something you like.
Mhm.
Easy. So that was new for me. That was good.
Yeah, and you were really resistant to this when I first put the slide up.
Well, and this shows you that you're not marketed to just because you see something
Right.
that doesn't have a brand, it doesn't have a make, model, or anything else.
Mhm.
You like it, but then it tells you what happens because you've seen it and how it goes down through it, even without anybody, excuse me, without anybody trying to do that.
Yeah. Which brings up the point, the real most people think their logo or overestimate the power of their logo. Their logo isn't important until step 6, right? Everything else that we're doing is about the customer, not about the brand. Step 6 is just associating it with that logo, that tagline, that brand, that person. So, I mean, I think he says pretty, succinctly, brands are about the stories that people tell themselves.
But what's interesting,
Right.
what will apply to the aircraft as well, is that I wasn't looking to buy anything when I saw that bike.
Mhm.
A lot of people are going to see the ZB2 and they're going to say, I need to check that out.
What is that thing? I want one. Right.
I mean, I already do, but it's not going to happen for a while.
Right. Exactly. Okay, cool. Thank you, John. And so book 1 out of 10 or 1 through 10? You muted again, John.
Okay, now say it again.
Would you give it a 1 through 10 rating? Recommend the book, don't recommend the book.
Probably an 8.
8? Okay, cool. That's high for you. Fantastic. Angel, how about you?
Mm.
Did you learn something you didn't know today and you wanna give the book a rating?
Yeah, it really give a clear direction more than compared to the 4 steps, because putting some thinking about the customer's feelings and how they on how your product will shift their feeling, how it will satisfy them after purchasing that product. You really need to consider it. And um it's easy to stop if you saw a sale, but in marketing you need to feel, as a customer you need to see the real purpose of that thing that you bought on a sale. If you, it really impacts the customer, because you want to repurchase it because it give you something, um it give you something meaning in your purchase. So yeah, this step really help me understand that process.
Right, exactly. And I think it kind of doesn't well, I always feel good when something tells us we're on the right track, and I think this does because, we've always advocated short video, long articles and things, and this kind of does a nice job. The short videos do, 1, 2, and 3, and, then the long articles do 4, 5, and 6, hopefully. And then, we need more social posts and things like that to get them to take action at the right time. So we have to hit them right when they've just gotten paid or they've just gotten a new budget approved or, whatever the circumstances are for them. He talks about how people buy on a random Tuesday, not necessarily because we wanted them to, but because the time is right for them, and that's kind of separating that from the line or separating that from the linear view of this. So, good idea. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And Ben, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I won't rate it. That's not fair. But I did pick up. It's really, one thing for sure. It's better to have these sessions.
Yeah.
It's great to be able to kind of link it directly. Have
Mm,
people say, "Well, this is how it relates," even if it's not us, TBT. It's related to something else.
yeah.
The book sometimes it can be, especially in an area that you don't work in a lot.
Yeah. It's
It's easier to
abstract.
have a discussion about something than try and figure it out yourself. Some books leap out. You kind of read it and you go, "Okay, yeah, I see that." But it's usually because you already have some knowledge. I think the thing that I keep taking away from these discussions is you're reminding yourself of the mechanics,
Mm,
and then you go back and look at what you're doing and thinking, I got lazy, or you didn't completely understand the mechanics of the framework, so you skip steps. We had a discussion yesterday, and I'm like listening to this. This is Michael and Kynan and I, and you think, well, that discussion could have benefited from a framework. We skipped
mhm,
steps and jumped around, but didn't realize we were jumping around. And at one point, you're sort of going, okay, so we just spent the last 5 minutes agreeing with each other. We could have skipped that 5 minutes altogether
mhm,
because we just kept rephrasing something. And when you look at this, I'm still trying to get the social media stuff and get myself online and do the social media activities. This sort of framework really helps you say, okay, the reason that it's not working is you're trying to do too many things at once.
mhm.
If I focus on just a couple of steps, if I say, okay, how do I interrupt the pattern? How do I get them to look at this
Yeah.
and not worry about the next step after that? It
Right.
was also really interesting to comment about why you get or why people get stuck in five, the satisfy critical mind problem. You end up constantly, when you look at the slide decks, which was an interesting example,
Yeah.
we're really probably our focus has to be more in the steps 1 and 2
Mhm.
than it has to be in the critical mind.
Yeah, because
But I
people
think the
yeah,
critical mind is what we hear,
yeah,
right? So we're saying, okay, the problem isn't that they're critical. The problem is that we haven't managed to do the interrupt the pattern and create comfort.
yeah, yeah,
So we're reading back critical mind.
yeah.
They're pushing back because it was interesting probably, and I won't go on too long, but the interesting
That's
comment
okay.
is call to action too early is
Yeah,
spam, you
yeah,
know? Call to action is too early is clickbait.
yeah,
But follow the process and it's satisfying a need.
yeah. And if somebody
That's of
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
Were
go
you
ahead.
saying yes? No, no, go ahead. You said if
I
somebody go
jumped
ahead.
on you. I was just gonna say, my dad and John and my son are all in the military. And, we were in martial arts and a bunch of other things. So, there's so much attention paid to the create comfort step, because if you are in a state of fear, you can't think rationally. And
Right.
most people are running around in a state, I'm afraid of spending money. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid it's going to crash. I'm afraid da 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 da. If you can't get them past their fear, you cannot satisfy their critical mind. So, anytime you're in a situation that, like an emergency or a car crash or whatever and stuff like that, rule number one is you get people calm down and get them comfortable, and then you can figure out how to solve the problem. And some people are so, so good at that. And a lot of salespeople are so good at that because you feel comfortable just talking to them. And I think that's a step that's missing in a lot of sales processes. It's just like, okay, I'm not going to pull your wallet out of your, back pocket here. I'm standing over here. Nothing is going to happen today that you don't want to have happen. And, some salespeople do that verbally or otherwise. But if we can create that comfort of, this is, we are not threatening your way of life. We are not threatening general aviation. We are not threatening anything, you just need to be comfortable talking and thinking about this. Thinking about what about this could scare people and how can we solve for comfort first. And then we can get their mind once we get their alarm bells from stop going off.
Yeah, you wonder if that's part of the problem. We're when you look at a new aircraft, when you look at this change in design,
Hmm.
it's threatening in a different way, right? It's threatening their concept of something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in consulting, that's a big challenge. When I was running my consulting, when we were working in state government, and you came in and said, we're going to do this change management thing.
Hmm.
The pushback is really high because you're threatening something some people have been doing for
Years.
30 years. Yeah, yeah, a long time. There was a joke at one point. They would say, you'd say, oh, some of these processes haven't changed in 50 years, and the CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, would put up their hand and say, yeah, yeah, a lot of these haven't changed in 100 years.
Yeah.
We've been doing the same kind of process for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
And so now you're saying you want to change it. And law enforcement was the same. You go in and although law enforcement, one of the senior officers said to me after we were talking about changing how we train public safety, and he said, if you don't get this right, you're going to get me dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's
That's a
nothing
pretty reasonable fear, right?
right. There's nothing harder to change than the aviation industry, and it is because, people cling to their checklist and they cling to the things that keep them safe. So it is really, really hard to change somebody's attitudes about any part of the process, and I think people underestimate the necessity to create that comfort. But yeah, that's an excellent point.
That's interesting. What are we threatening?
Yeah.
Hmm. I hadn't thought of that way. So, as DBT Arrow, what is it exactly we're threatening?
You're threatening the tradition of Aviation.
What's the wingspan on that thing?
30 feet, something like that. It's quite a bit shorter than the other ones because of the vertical, because of the way the wings work. It doesn't need the wingspan. It's with giant.
But for what a lot of people are spending on various and sundry aircraft of that size, it'll still fit in a T hangar.
Oh yeah. But a lot of aircraft fit in T hangars. But yes.
Yeah. I know.
Well, actually, you'd have to look at that because you'd have to go in frontwards. I think it would fit in a T hangar. That's really
where the
interesting.
poles are. Yeah.
But you got to go the other way.
Yeah.
Normally, the T hangars,
Tail back.
you have to have the tail back, and
Right.
because the wing is way wider than a horizontal tail would be, and normally you push the plane in backwards. So
Yeah.
It'd be good to know if it would fit in a T hangar because of that.
Yeah.
Because then you can have another sales point.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're threatening a lot of things, to be honest. I mean, we drive a Tesla, and not for political reasons or anything else, but there's a lot of flack that people give Tesla drivers because they're afraid. They're afraid that ICE engines are going to go away. They're afraid gas stations are going to go away. They're afraid the whole oil and gas industry is going to be disrupted. So there's a lot of fear. They're not afraid of the Tesla. I mean, it's not a scary car. It's just a car. They're afraid of what it means. They're afraid of the economic change. And they're afraid of the political crap and everything else that goes along with it. But, it's
the big fear with electric cars, and it's funny because we bought a plug-in hybrid. And one of the reasons was, my wife, quite rationally, we live in we live in regional Australia, right?
Yeah,
So it's not outback rural, but we live in regional Australia, and she just thought an electric car is completely out of the question. Where would we charge it? You can't get anywhere in Australia. This huge range anxiety issue.
Yeah.
And we've been driving this thing for 4 months, and she wants an electric car. She'll probably never go back to a petrol car.
Yeah.
So we'll get the next car she gets. Right now she's driving a used Subaru, which she forced her. So 4-wheel drive. She likes that. But,
those are cool cars.
But it's going to go. And the next car that comes in behind it's going to be a full electric, not even a plug-in hybrid, because all these people we're running into, you look around now, you see a lot. When you didn't notice it before, you see a lot of electric cars, but that, where I was going is, the challenging thing, the electric car challenged the concept that you could get around Australia without in an electric car, because you can't drive. But we bought this thing. We had to go to the conference in Queensland, so we used a tank of gas the first 2 weeks we bought it. We drove all the way up to Queensland, which was quite a long drive, about 5 hours, and 5 hours back on one tank of gas. And we still haven't bought gas. And it's been 4 months. We haven't been near it. We still have more than half a tank of gas, and the car is telling us the fuel is old. So we have to run the motor.
Run the fuel, right.
To get the fuel out so we could put fuel in. So the car is warning us that, otherwise it forces you out of electric mode.
Yeah.
And runs the motor even though it doesn't need it.
So the problem,
the fuel gets old. So you're like, wow, we've gone 4 months. We've gone more than 3,000 kilometers on what is basically, 10 gallons? No, it'd be 6 gallons of gas.
So everybody's trying to solve for step 5, which is satisfy the critical mind, when it's really step 2, the create comfort. That's the problem with electric cars
That's interesting.
in Australia. And nobody's going to admit, well, I'm just not comfortable. They're going to say it's step 5 when it's really step 2, right?
Oh, that's interesting. No, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like when you're diagnosing, you mistake step 2 for step 5.
Yeah,
No,
because
you
people
mistake
will
step 5 for step 2, right.
yeah, people will admit to step 5. They won't admit to step 2, That's just not rational human behavior, so but
Mm.
what I love about these book clubs, and I'll just, kind of wrap up with this and, just go around one more time, is that we get to take these abstract ideas and apply them to what we're doing. And number one, if we just keep doing the same thing all the time, we don't grow, we don't learn, we don't change what we do, we don't improve, and we don't adapt to the market and all those things. But, the book club kind of forces us to apply a new framework and go, does this apply or does this not? And then by either accepting it or rejecting it, we change what we do consciously, right? So, yeah, I really love what you said earlier, Ben, about how sometimes the discussions, even if you do or don't read the book, the discussion is what's worth your time.
Yeah, well, because it helps you. It reminds you. Sometimes reading a book, you get, when I read a book, I do often take, you start taking notes. You think, oh, wait, hang on.
Yeah,
You can apply this. It depends on the book you're reading.
yeah,
Even science fiction, though, sometimes you think, that's interesting.
yeah,
You could do that.
absolutely. That's
There was
true.
there's a great science fiction book. I can't remember the name right now, which is a shame, but I really enjoyed reading it. And the character in the book had this ability to pause for a minute
Mm,
and think, and it was all part of the book. If he did this process of pausing, he could transport himself to other parts of the galaxy. It was very cool. And you think it was exactly what you were saying before. If you can't get over the state of fear, you have to. We did that in public safety. There's a course out here now that the Regional Aviation Authority of Australia, Regional Aviation Association of Australia is promoting to the regional carriers, and it's this upset training. They're finding that
mm,
now a fair
yeah.
percentage of aviation accidents are related to something the pilot actually knew but didn't think of,
Mm,
right? Something disturbed their thought, shook them up briefly, and they ended up in an accident or an incident when if they could have managed it, if they could have broken out of the fear cycle, if you will, and thought clearly, they would have thought, oh, obviously it's this, and fixed it and
yeah,
flown on.
yeah.
So, the idea that if you create comfort, you get to the rational mind is really valuable.
Mhm,
And that's where I was going. This sort of reminds you, oh, okay. So one of the things I wrote is, what are we threatening?
yeah.
When we talk to people about our airplane, exactly what threat do they detect? Because we're not doing that now.
Right.
No, yeah, what
Nothing we've
alarm bells are
nothing
we
we've done
right.
has said, what are we threatening and how do we address it? We're just following, pitch deck rules.
Mhm.
But okay. Anyway, go ahead and wrap up. So I know I'm taking
Oh, no,
so much
that's
of your time.
okay. Yeah, let's, throw it back to Angel and John. Was there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
Well, I'm just going to follow up on what Ben said about pilots that do things with a little story about my son when he went through flight school when he was in a twin, going for the twin rating. I don't know I don't remember exactly the sequence of events, but anyway, part of the thing is you flip an engine off so that you learn how to handle an engine failure, right? Well, the the airplane almost flipped upside down, and the instructor couldn't get it back, and Jim grabbed the controls and went ahead and did a roll and got it out. So gave it back to him, and the guy said, "How'd you know to do that?" And he said, "This makes sense.
You stop fighting it and go with it. Yeah.
I didn't go with it.
Yeah,
Can't always do that, but sometimes."
yeah,
Anyway, that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Angel, anything you'd
Um,
like to add?
Um, but I agree earlier that about this book club discussion, it pushes us to think beyond the theory of the book and actually test those approaches and also from get some ideas from others as well. So I really enjoy listening and also taking some notes.
Yeah, excellent. Right. Well, I'll just end with one quick story. When I was learning to fly at 172, and this is another fear story too. Um, I was way too high coming into Salt Lake International Airport, and I asked the
Is this
ATC.
a marijuana story or just ask?
I was
Just ask.
Well, it was, actually, this is a flying story, so, this is actually relevant, but, yeah. So and this was, I think, my 3rd solo. So, I was not very comfortable at all, I'm still, like, freaking out, on the inside and trying not to be freaking out on the outside. But I was way too high coming into Salt Lake International just because of the way the traffic lined up and everything else. And I asked ATC, "Can I do a 360 to lose altitude?" And he said, "You have got a mile of runway and you are a 172. You can use this whole darn thing to get this plane down." And I'm like, "Oh," because I'd only done landings one way, and that's using the PAPI and landing on the numbers, and that was the only way I knew how to land. But it never occurred to me that, you can land somewhere else on the runway besides the numbers. And it's just like, if I hadn't been in fear, my brain was, like, vacuum locked on, "I have to do this a specific way." You know what I mean? And so that's a fear response, and I think nobody will ever admit to fear, especially if they're in aviation, but it is a huge factor, I think, in a lot of what we do. So, the intellectual cannot happen unless you're comfortable enough to accept the idea and go, "Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, it can be done that way," but without, him talking about it and, using a really calm voice. And you know how some people in ATC have that gift of just going, "You've got a long runway. Think about it," and then it's just like, "Okay." I came off of vapor lock and was able to figure it out and go, "Okay, I can imagine myself actually landing halfway down this runway, and it'll actually work exactly the same way." So,
Right.
yeah, and I think that's true of a lot of people that we're trying to sell to. If they are in fear, they will never tell you they're in fear, but they also are not going to move until, or are not going to even engage their rational thought until we can get them past the fear.
So then I guess the question is, how do you ascertain what their fear is? In a sales meeting or marketing effort, whatever.
Yeah, I think you have to acknowledge it and just ask them, "How do you feel about this? What are you worried about?" Or, something along those lines, as long as you can do it without being insulting. And a lot of people will tell you, "I don't want to mess up my system. I've got something working and I don't want to make it worse," or whatever their fear is. You don't ask them what their fear is. You just ask them, "What are you worried about? What's your biggest concern about this?" So I think you can be pretty direct about it, as long as you don't name it fear, right? You just say, "So, does this sound like a good idea?" Or what concerns do you have about this particular product or service or whatever? So that's a perfectly rational thing. Or, if you're a marketer, of course, then you have to sit in a room by yourself and brainstorm, or read the comments in Facebook. Some of the comments on the DBT were, "This doesn't sound safe," or "This, is taking something away from whatever." People will often tell you that. And then, of course, we just dismiss it as irrational rather than addressing it. And that's the wrong way to go about it. We want to tackle it head on. Good question. Yeah. Okay. Well, now we really are over time, but thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being here.